Welcome back, friends. People are still coming into the room, so a lot of familiar names, a few new ones. Very, very special welcome for you if you're here for the first time. Warm welcome to those who will be listening to this and the recording. About the recordings, let me just warn you that Christopher is gently and kindly, I want to say, recorded a session to fill in the Monday gap. So if you go to the Sangha Live webpage, the Dharma library, you'll have a full session. There's no image, but it's a sound recording, and he has also answered some of the questions that were left unanswered yesterday, although we're expecting you to just come back again if needed today, or just ask them again today. So, very briefly, we have this week with Christopher Titmuss. We're exploring the theme of fear and fearlessness, and especially Christopher is, I don't know why I'm thinking of Christmas this time of year. Anyway, Christopher is addressing fear is not what you think it is. So let's brace ourselves for that. And yeah, just the habitual recommendations. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end of the session. So if you want to come live, you have your little digital hand there. You just click on that and I'll click my to bring you on screen. Otherwise, you can ask your questions in the chat box where you're greeting each other now. And just type question in capital letters before you actually write the question so we know it's a question. Otherwise, I'll just mention Dharma as a regular practice. Dharma, the practice of generosity, the ground foundation, sustain Sangha Live, to sustain this Sangha. Us behind the screens, the teachers, and the whole Sangha, actually, because this is a work that is done to create and sustain and support the Sangha by just spreading the Dharma as best as we can. So we don't have any other kind of income. If you can contribute with the smallest donation you can give, it's very well appreciated and welcome. If not, please keep looking up what we offer, the teachings, the sessions, because that's what we're here for. Okay, enough from me. Let's dive into fear is not what you think it is. Thank you.
Thank you. A very warm welcome to each and every one of you. We have this hour together, and in this period of time, falling into three areas: a talk, a guided meditation, an opportunity to either hear or read in the chat from you, and I'll endeavour to respond to the questions, providing they're easy. And George mentioned a moment or two ago with regard to the Monday morning. So yesterday, as he said, I recorded the talk that I would have given, the guided meditation, and I answered three of the questions from yesterday. The theme of the Monday talk for you was on the influence and the impact of the old memory upon the present, and how we need to develop turn our reflection, the power of it, to the past, not the distant past, see what led up to the impact on the present that generated unpleasant sensations, feelings, emotions, or and a contraction going on in in the mind, particularly the way we perceive and the way we think about things. So that was the theme of Monday. Let's have the quiet minute together, and then we'll get underway with the theme of today. A sip of the morning chai. My friends come sometimes to visit. I think they actually come more for the chai. Having spent more than 7 years of my life in India altogether, I'm not too bad at making the chai. We have a theme for today, and the theme for the day will focus on the relationship of fear and the influence in the spoken as well as in the unspoken. And that's the whole area and field of mindfulness and awareness to really see what is going on. Firstly, in speaking to you, I'd like to dispense, best as possible, with a kind of fictionality of our mind. And what I have in mind here is we sometimes look at ourselves and we say to ourselves, I've got so many fears inside of me, or I've got a few fears, or 3 or 4 big fears, or whatever. And as was encouraged yesterday, it's important to name them and therefore to see what the relationship is to them. But we need to remember that though it is valuable and useful to work on a fear, a specific one, we need to be clear that it's not like we work on one fear and we perhaps resolve it, it's no longer inhibiting our life, and then we work on another fear. You'll never finish. You'll be doing it for the rest of your life. The point being that fear is not a plurality. It's not a multiplicity. Fear is singular in its manifestation. So there is one fear, but many manifestations of it. This makes it a little clearer and easier. So then comes the challenge in exploration of the singularity of the fear. What triggers, what sparks this fear, which lands upon and distorts perception, inhibits an opportunity for clear seeing, because the fear is a contraction and therefore it is an obstruction. What on earth is the causes, the primary conditions for the fear? And we need to take real notice of this if we wish to make a transition from fear to fearlessness. And I would humbly suggest, in the looking at fear, there are a few considerations. One may resonate or more may resonate with you. So firstly, looking at fear, what's underneath it? What's the influencing? One, for sure, is insecurity. So where there is insecurity, that insecurity may or may not be felt, but it certainly inhibits action. It can inhibit the voice, the written word. The insecurity, as one feature, may well be a relationship to the other, your audience of one or more, and in that you can't act. You have developed a way of life, which is tragic, in which there is a dependency on the recognition and the approval of others. Of course, it may have a long history from school and the monstrous forms of education that children are subjected to, and relationship with parents and siblings, brothers and sisters, and so forth. That's all the therapy, psychological kind of an analysis. To me, far more important is fear under the influence of insecurity. The insecurity brings the contraction inhibits your freedom to express yourself. I'll give examples in a while. A second important area with fear, not only insecurity, but also, in a way, our relationship with, as mentioned before with you, what was arising, what is arising, and what might or will arise. So when you are engaged in the fields, the three fields of time, metaphorically, and actually yesterday, today, and tomorrow, there is a vulnerability to fear manifesting in one of those three areas. So past, it might be fear of it repeating. Present might be the impact of a situation right in front of your eyes, what you hear or see or whatever. And future, fear of what might happen, fear of what will happen, dying, death, sickness, loss of a loved one, and much, much more. So insecurity, take real notice of. It can be so habitual that there is a detachment, in fact, from feeling the insecurity. One's just got so used to it through the manifestation of the fear. And thirdly, and equally important, these are the three areas I'm referring to today, equally important is thought. Never underestimate the power of the thought. So the thought with fear may have some content to it. Worry about the other people, person. Will it be successful or whatever? But the thought itself, in its presentation to you, with or without feelings, with or without any sensations going on whatsoever in the body, the thought itself determines the fear, with the complete absence of feelings and emotions. And the potency of that thought there lands in the consciousness, and we don't have a voice. And the view may well be in the thought, for some, I can't say anything. I can't do anything. Situations are too big for me to handle. So the core fear is presenting itself in a thought world And one expression of it is, I can't. What's the point? So the fear and doubt, and when that happens, there is a powerlessness inside, because the thought has decided who you are, what you can do, ways that you can respond. Thought is a significant influence. If we go back for a moment or two to the feeling, sensations in the body, in the emotions, in the inner life there, it's a little bit more tangible. This is fear. It's not fear, it's sensation, but we say, the thought says, this is fear. And we almost kind of know what we have to work with. But what about all the situations where we fail to speak up? We don't realize just how contracted we are. To give an example, a friend of mine, he said to me, we were talking about diet, food. I'm vegan, he's vegetarian, and then he said, from time to time, I go and visit my parents. And we have Sunday dinner together. And I love my parents, and I go to see them. And on the table for the meal there, he says there is a meat on the table. Chicken and beef and pork or whatever it might be. I prefer to say that there are dead pieces of dead animals on the table. That to me is more realistic. However, and he said, but I don't want to upset my parents. So when my father cuts up the slices of meat and puts it, I don't say anything. No. So there is the tendency to want to be pleasing to the parents. That tendency will manifest elsewhere. So in order to be pleasing to the parents, and I told him this as well, of course, he sacrificed the value of not eating animals, birds, and fish. He sacrificed the value. And that compromise meant he couldn't say anything to his parents. And the outcome of that was, in fact, in my view there, he wanted their approval. And in the expression of the wanting of the approval, it is underneath all of that, there's fear of disapproval, fear of being judged, fear of some reaction from his father or from his mother. Fear is there. So we, in our daily life circumstances, need to really check in with ourselves with regard to the voice. So when these teachings speak of fearlessness, from fear to fearlessness, we are looking at the underlying influences, making time to meditate on that. Therefore, insecurity. My goodness me, life is insecure. That's what life is about. It is a state of insecurity. And it's obviously so insecure that our modest influence there is that because life is a movement of processes and it's dynamic and it's changing, and the experiences are unfolding all the time. We use the language of choice, and then we rightfully begin to question that there, and that dynamic keeps regularly putting us in insecure situations. Who knows what's going to happen today in your life or my life, as an example? Who knows what the speaker is going to say? I didn't even know, in about 5 minutes' time, etc. So we learn to live with insecurity. And in that learning to live with it, that a wisdom and clarity can emerge through it. And we can then begin to sense a rather expansive response rather than a contracted one. That's a major feature of our practice. What is an expansive response? Making allowances for some insecurity there, but in the insecurity, it shakes us up. In the insecurity, it's getting things moving a bit more inside. And that movement generates more space. That more space says, Mum, Dad, or if you're from the other classes, Mummy and Daddy, please, I'm not eating meat. I'm not eating fish, and so forth. And just says it. They ask why. I'm a vegetarian, and I prefer to be vegetarian. Boom. So therefore, there may be a little bit of insecurity. How will they react? But the voice has expressed itself. Are there situations in your daily life where your mouth is closed when it should be open? When we look at the daily life, let me take a larger picture with you for a moment. And then in the specifics. So in the larger picture, there are a whole variety of major issues which are going on. And global issues, climate change, environmental destruction, loss of resources, wars and violence, and much, much more. Social issues, political issues, issues of fear, issues of violence. My goodness me. And that world of those events and constructs certainly do impact upon us. But what happens with that impact? We, being the creatures that we are, we easily absorb it. It leaves impressions. Those impressions may end up with the inability to open our mouth or to write or to activate change there. We can't do anything. We don't say anything. And we think that shows equanimity. It's not. It's nothing to do with equanimity. Equanimity is to do with insecurity, not with staying quiet so we don't upset anybody. So in that experience, the teachings are liberating the heart and mind, liberating consciousness, liberating the body to act in a skillful way, and liberating the voice. And all of those areas genuinely do matter. What, back to the question, what do you need to say that you are not saying? Let's take the Middle East for a moment, the large picture. They all matter. the outer manifestations has a common factor of fear. Identification with the nation state, over-identification with it, triggers fear. Fear of invasion, fear of loss, fear of the other, whatever. So any intensity of identification is another factor in fear. Take the Middle East, for example. I have some experience. Between 1992, yes, and 2019, just before COVID, I went to Israel, Palestine every year, sometimes twice a year, there dealing with the suffering in the communities and making some small contribution at times to bringing them together. So I know Palestinians rather well, and I know the Israelis rather well, because my job there is listening to their minds and responding. Or take something else. The identification with any side, any identification with any side is not in support of the Dharma and profound wisdom and teachings. It is part of the problem. I hold on to one side, the thought and the view identifies with one side, it's against the other, and that applies with the Ukraine, it applies with the Sudan and all the other wars that are going on our planet. The taking of sides is the problem. It's a prejudice in one direction and it's against the other. Are you able, as a human being, when any of those conversations come up in your life, to speak without the dualism of taking sides because there's fear and violence in the view, even if you don't feel it? And therefore, one is looking deeper. You might feel insecure in speaking up. You may not, may not have the answers, but you're finding your voice, you're feeling some insecurity around it. It's a strange thing to speak up. You're not prejudiced one way or the other, but you're liberating your voice. When we are passive, please make no mistake about it, in the areas of fear, and anger, of course, is a manifestation of fear. When we are very passive about it, when we acquiesce, we don't speak up, we don't write, we say nothing. We are part of the problem. Don't think for a single moment that passivity, don't confuse it with silence, has no relationship whatsoever. Don't confuse it with equanimity. Don't think for a moment it's other people's problem. Those politicians, those generals who are planning and planning for wars and so on and so forth. Don't project there. But much more, it's those who stay silent and say nothing are in fact indirectly, not directly, but indirectly allowing the status quo to continue. And therefore, we are engaged in a movement from fear to fearlessness. We are engaged in a movement of the willingness to feel the experience of being insecure rather than being withdrawn, detached, and cut off from. And some may say that, in fact, the insecurity and the freeing up of the voice in itself is showing compassion. That we're not going to submit to the powerful voices of others in order that we stay comfortable, in order that we don't agitate any insecurity. this applies not only to the bigger picture, because fear is singular. I met with a person in a one-to-one, and she said to me that she had been working for this company for several years, and she couldn't take it a day longer. And the reason for this is that the boss, the manager of her department in this large company, was a bully. And he would shout, point the finger, very critical, clearly an agitated man. And she just found it horrible going into work every day. And she said to herself, I can't take this any longer. I'm good at my job. I know my job well. And after several years, she decided to leave. So I said to her the obvious question. Did you speak to the manager about his ongoing behavior? No, she didn't. Did you write a letter to those, he's a manager. Did you write a letter to the board of directors, to the CEO, giving very clear, precise and specific examples of what he has said to her and others over the years that left her in the position of leaving? No. So I said to her, your departure means that you have left the person who replaces you in the same position as you are leaving. Where's the kindness in that? Where is the love? Where is the compassion? The problem was passed on because the person couldn't speak. And even better, in this case, couldn't write. The self-interest, the self-compassion overshadowed what was equally necessary to hold accountable the bullies. And one takes the necessary steps for this. In the political world, it's called whistleblower. Here it's called freeing up the voice. Are you dealing in your daily life at work with anyone like that? Are you afraid, therefore insecurity, and afraid that if you speak up, you'll lose your job? Well, and there are very, very, very good reasons for the fear. Good reasons. Oh, if I lose my job, how am I going to feed my kids? If I lose my job, there's so much unemployment, I won't get another job. I'll just put up with it. People take risks. They know the insecurity and they take risks. But in the risk, there is human dignity. In the risk, there is the voice. That voice doesn't have to be angry. It doesn't have to be attacking, doesn't have to behave in the same way as the bully, whether it's the bully in the classroom or the bully in the college or the bully in the workplace or the bully on the street. And war is the fighting between the bullies. And we as human beings, we have to hold that accountable, but we've got to really speak up and attend to the insecurity that goes with it. But my goodness me, we have some fine women and men and other on this world who do speak up. And my goodness me, they really know there are pretty major consequences for that. Right, I've been speaking for 30 minutes. The time is galloping by. So have some reflection today. There will be opportunity today and tomorrow where you need to find your voice. You might need to prepare what you want to say. You might need to write it down and send it across to the other. And there's a kind of quiet determination to free up your voice. You're not going to live in fear. You're willing to take some insecurities that may go along with it. But you're bringing a voice, calm as best you can, clarity as best you can, freeing up of the being there. And the more of us who find ways to free up the being, the more change will come in this world. Please do not go quietly into the night. All right, enough. Let's have a quiet minute together and then a short meditation on the theme. So in the sitting posture, sitting rather tall, and in the uprightness of our posture, which itself is grounding. The very posture itself contributes to our authority. Remember that the word authority, it's in its use from centuries back from a French word, in fact. Authority, author, authentic. What that essentially means is to make happen. Therefore, we express our authority, in this case with the spoken or the written. We are being authentic. We are creating, so to speak, the author of a different view, which is without fear and therefore without blame, therefore without taking sides, therefore seeing the common humanity. And then finding the language, the discourse to express and reflecting on what am I going to say? What am I going to write? What am I going to do? So we listen to the supportive voices. We meditate to absorb what might be of use and value. We reflect. What will contribute to responding without fear? What will contribute to feeling insecurity? What will contribute to reducing contraction or identification, which is polarizing? Listening, meditating, reflecting, expressing. Listening inwardly, meditating, reflecting, expressing a fresh view. We are not going to go silently into the night. We engage in authentic inquiry into ourselves. Is there anywhere today in this unfolding time where I need to free up the voice? Not in order to dump blame and anger on the other. That only confirms the fear, like a dog under threat in the corner, whimpering with fear, then suddenly becomes very angry, and then the dog's attack. we reflect, we research, we do our homework, we learn. We will never know enough. But still we respond. Still we trust in what we know. And we give some preparation for the reaction, the inner reaction. Oh, I shouldn't have spoken up. I shouldn't have done this. I could have said it better. I'm never going to speak in front of a group of people again. The fear is still creeping in. Oh, we grasp and identify with the views of the other towards us. So then we pull back. So the freeing up of the being is to stay authentic, true to it, regardless of the reaction inwardly, the old habits, outwardly, the reaction of others. We may need to reflect and learn about the inspirational examples of those who quietly express their concern, make a statement, engage in an activity in relationship to others, to express a different way of view, which is caring, empathetic, humane, considerate. So we become an agent of change. And we're willing to work with the fears that come up. We're willing to address and attend to the insecurity. The problematic thoughts we might have about it. Because we're staying true to something transcendent. Transcendent of the fears and the insecurity, and being all too human and all too fearful. May all beings explore the freedom of communication. May all beings be mindful of the influencing factors of fear: time, thought, identity, clinging, and more. May all beings live with wisdom and love. All right. Thank you very much for lending an ear. So, if there are any questions you might please don't hesitate to ask. If there are any questions on the screen as well, on the chat, I'm just scrolling down at the moment. And thank you for the very the kind words there. So there's a question here, and it says, speaking up, in quotes, may lead to activism, which may lead to polarization, which we see a lot. How do you see combining not choosing sides and speaking up? All right. Good point, and good question. The speaking up is a recognition of the importance of non-harm, non-violence, non-aggression. What that reveals is our common humanity. The person who is speaking up, if they understand this well, is not taking sides. It's not we are superior and you are inferior. That's what division does. That's what the binary situation does in the taking of sides. So we can be engaged, we can be fully supportive of change, we can make use of the streets for activism, as some will do, and many other ways as well. But the mind is not a prisoner in for and against. That will bring fear, it will eventually bring anger, and eventually it will bring burnout. One will not last in the for and against world. We are simply expressing something freely, not dependent on the approval of others. And we keep true to this principle of the common humanity. That's what's referred to. Yeah. Thank you for the kind words there. One person says a good point, but I think we probably all can know this. Beautiful, powerful topical words. Thank you very much. Currently meditating outside, and halfway through a dog came and barked at me from a distance, then relaxed as it came towards me. Interesting how dogs and people will, quote unquote, bark at things they do not understand. That's a memorable line, good line for today. How dogs and people will bark at things they do not understand. All right. May we not engage in that. Or as the Buddhists would say in the East, otherwise you're in danger of being reborn as a dog. All right. Anyone else in the spoken world? I don't know how you get into the spoken world, but the hand on the screen. Question. Nice. You refer to fear being a manifestation of anger. Can you elaborate a little bit, please? Yeah. So I used the fearful dog as an example. And then the fear, something happens and the anger comes out. So we see this at political levels with the language of there is no choice. So there is fear of the other. And with the fear of the other, the blame begins to give support to the fear. And the blame intensifies and it becomes anger. The anger may not be felt as any kind of feeling, sensation, or emotion. I've got certain politicians in mind here. So they're afraid of the other. They don't feel they're afraid, but they are. They're angry with the other. They don't feel the anger. And the intentionality, devoid of any feeling, emotional life, in the thought life is to make decisions to inflict suffering on the other. Because their fear is it will continue unless we really hurt them. And then we have no choice. So our exploration in the big picture and in the small picture, when we are angry, that's heaping blame on the other, attacking the other, finding fault with the other, with or without emotion, there. If we look, can we look at the anger? What am I afraid of? What is happening? So sometimes there are situations where we need to use the conventional therapeutic term here, psychology, of we have to set boundaries. Get concerned with it. There are rare occasions when it's genuinely a necessity. There are rare occasions. But how easily we may find the other problematic. We don't want to deal with that. And we close him or her out of our life. We push them away. We set the boundary. I don't want any contact with you. All this will come round. Those who set boundaries will find boundaries set to them as well. People will be closing you out of your life if you're closing others out of their life. They may not even know about it. So freedom is a freedom from the boundaries, because the boundaries keep changing. And sometimes the wisdom says yes to this. Sometimes the wisdom says no. The wisdom has to, we trust in a different exploration. If you trust in fear, good luck. Good luck. There's the singularity of the fear, and it will just keep manifesting in another way. The fear hasn't been looked at. And I'm speaking with some of my daughter, 15, 20 years of experience working with domestic violence, working with great issues in the family life. She and I have had many conversations. I've actually done some online courses on domestic violence, and know there are steps which really need to be taken to protect parent and children and so forth. I'm not naive, but really take care with this setting of the boundaries. So, my gosh, the hour's gone by. I'm just warming up, and the questions are just warming up as well. All right. We'll keep the questions and we'll endeavour to respond as the time goes by. I might do an audio of them if you're sends them, and I could do it that way to cover them. Are you saying that freeing ourselves from the need to feel secure is the way to speak authentically? The classic one-liner, feel the fear and do it anyway. Sometimes so the discomfort of insecurity is a signal we are needing to speak. It could be. It could be. But we're going much deeper than feel the fear. We're going so much deeper. We are saying there is fearlessness. We are saying there is the thought required to confirm this is a fear. There is a belief. There is a belief in contraction. There is a holding back. If we begin to puncture that, dig into that, open that out more, it might reveal some insecurity. It might not. But we genuinely, the sense is there's a more expansive sense to step forward, in this case, to say what we need to say. And that itself is not feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's responding because one is not in fear. One is just taking a step. It might be taking a risk, significant one. And the great people of this earth, that's what they do. In a really caring and thoughtful way, they take risks. They are the gods of the earth, in my view. All right. I've come to 9:03, so we're on top of the hour. So please do send in any messages or any questions. I'll talk with George, and we'll endeavour to respond to them. And a very big thank you as the final word for your kindness, your presence, and of course your donations, which give real support to the team of Sangha Live and to myself. And it's a really beautiful way to serve and to connect with you. We have huge appreciation for your support. Lots of love to you, and I'll see you in the morning. Thank you.